Welcome to Your Personal Power Pod, a podcast about aligning yourself with the life you want. And here are your hosts, Sandy Abel and Shannon Young.
Good morning, Shannon. How are you today?
Good morning, Sandy. I am well. I'm super excited to see the sun in Southern Oregon today. We've had nothing but gloom and frozenness for a while. So it's just a glorious day.
It is beautiful. I just love it. I think we need to go for a walk later or something so we can get out and enjoy the beauty of the place.
Agreed.
Today, we're talking about important stuff, so we'll do that first.
We will. And I'm really pleased that this topic is coming around now. We are entering another political season. God help us all. And I feel like this topic about whether you're judgmental, tolerant, or accepting is really, really key right now for your individual happiness and the happiness of your relationships.
Absolutely. I think so. It seems like people are more judgmental these days. I don't know if they're exposed to more things that they need to make decisions about. First of all, let's define judgmental, tolerant, and accepting are terms that describe different attitudes and approaches you might have towards people or ideas or beliefs or behaviors. And using these approaches can have both positive and negative consequences. And it's important to decide which to use in every situation.
Yes, we are biologically designed to make certain kinds of snap judgments in order to keep ourselves safe.
Right.
But we run across more people and situations and information in our daily life now than sometimes people used to, 100, 200 years ago in a year or multiple years. So these instincts are being tested to a point that they never have been before.
Exactly. With the combination of social media and television and YouTube and just everything out there, all the technology that brings us information and people sharing their thoughts, we are exposed to a lot going on and we form judgments about those.
Whether we mean to or not.
Exactly. You can see something on TV and go, gee, I really like that, or gee, I really don't. And there's a judgment right there.
In the situation with my husband and I, we watch TV occasionally while we eat dinner, and it has become a sort of bonding situation where we crack snarky jokes at whatever we're seeing. I have noticed that it does become a habit in the rest of my life too. So I have to be really careful about the way I think when we're doing that versus the way I'm actually interacting with the world outside of my living room.
Exactly. And if you want to have opinions, that's just fine. And you want to share them with your husband, that's fine. But you don't need to go out and to the world and tell people what you think about all the political candidates or all the issues that are being discussed out there in the world. Or it's not really smart to go around sharing your opinions all the time and making judgments all the time. Especially most of the time, it might be based on just what you saw on TV. And you don't know how accurate that is. You don't know how complete a story it is. So when you are judgmental, you form opinions or make critical assessments about someone or something, often based on your personal standards, values, and beliefs. You're quick to criticize or label without fully understanding the context or considering alternative perspectives.
Yes. Frequently when you're being judgmental, it has nothing to do with the other person. You actually aren't seeing them. You're not caring where they're coming from. You're making no attempt to empathize or understand. And understandably, that can lead to a whole lot of misunderstandings and conflict and inhibit any kind of open communication that you might want to have.
Absolutely. It hinders the development of positive relationships and limits your ability to grow and learn and appreciate things that are different from your narrow little world. And we all have a narrow little world. We have what we live in. We have our town or our house or our beliefs. And we walk in those, which work for us usually. But when we come across somebody or something that is different, not necessarily negative or destructive or hurtful, just different, a lot of people tend to judge that and say it's a bad thing. And that is concerning because it leads to a lot of negativity and a lot of destructive behavior.
Yes. And here's the thing. It takes energy to approach the world with an open mind and to be accepting and to make an effort to put yourself in other people's shoes and try and figure out where they're coming from. And one of the things that we as an American society are lacking is energy. I think part of the tendency for people to be judgmental is they just don't have the bandwidth to extend themselves that way.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it also takes compassion. And I don't know, we've discussed compassion in other episodes. Compassion is when you can feel where somebody else is coming from and let them be there and just be supportive of that. I think politics or religion or those kinds of things that are very set in their own little ways have trouble expanding and seeing that other political views or other religions are equally as valid as what your beliefs are. And so you end up being judgmental.
Yes. On the other hand, there is definitely a place for judgment, and it can keep you from entering into bad situations or even merely just those that don't serve you. So it's really about recognizing when to be which.
Exactly. And most of the time, there's not a need to be judgmental. You just allow other people to believe what they want, do what they want, as long as they're not infringing on your rights to do whatever you believe or do.
Right.
However, if you're walking down the street at night and you see a group of people that look kind of sketchy and they're checking you out, it's good to make a judgment there. And it's good to move across the street or get your phone out and be ready to call somebody or whatever you need to do to protect yourself. Judgments like that can help you stay safe and also emotionally safe if you are hanging out with people that are doing things that doesn't fit for you or treating you in a way that is uncomfortable. It's okay to make a judgment about that and say, you guys have a right to do what you want, but not to me and not to hurt people. And so I'm gone. Thank you very much.
And that comes down to setting boundaries.
Exactly. That's the time when it is okay to be judgmental. But most of the time out in the world, when I hear people being judgmental, it's not about anything that directly affects them. It's just they've heard somebody on the news, some politician or somebody share their thoughts, and people decide to be judgmental about it. And it's just negative, and it doesn't accomplish anything. It's important to pay attention and notice if you're just judgmental for random things.
And there's a difference. I mean, you can set boundaries and decide what's good for you without being judgmental. Like, I don't have to judge somebody for their lifestyle if it's working for them.
Right.
But if it doesn't work for me, it's also okay for me to say, you're happy and healthy and I appreciate that, but I can't participate because X doesn't work for me.
Exactly.
That's just about taking care of myself, that there's no judgment involved there. I'm not saying that person is bad or evil or stupid or lacking somehow. I'm just recognizing that not all situations work for all people.
Exactly.
So being able to distinguish between judging and, just making healthy decisions for yourself.
And that's being tolerant.
There we go.
There you go. When you're tolerant, you accept other people's behaviors or beliefs or opinions, even if you don't agree with them. You don't have to embrace or approve of them. You just acknowledge that they exist for some people, like you said. Tolerance can be a great thing. It means you're willing to coexist peacefully and respect the rights of others to hold their views, and that you have the right to hold yours.
Yes. And where we get into trouble here, since we kind of touched on politics, is that the narrative in our political universe right now is dire and comes down to the fate of democracy. And I was telling this to the class that I teach at the local university last night. You have to be able to look at where the messaging has come from. Do I necessarily have to judge the people across the street because they support a candidate that I don't? Or can I look at why I feel the way I do? Well, maybe it's because the news media is spinning things a certain way, or the general message from the party is spinning things a certain way that is turning people against each other. Right. So maybe look at the person instead of at the message. Most people have a pretty good reason for believing what they do or supporting the candidate they support, but it probably isn't the overall huge, dire, dramatic reason that is most apparent.
Right. And so if they're tolerant, It's a constructive thing. It's approach to building harmonious relationships, even if you have different beliefs. When you're tolerant, you foster a diverse and inclusive society, which is kind of lacking. I know people make a big deal about diversity and inclusivity, but it seems to be a struggle for a lot of folks.
Yes, and not just along traditional lines like racial or gender roles, but about just beliefs in general. That's always existed to some extent. There's much more animosity involved these days around a lot more topics, it feels like.
Yes, and it's unfortunate. Tolerance is something we all need to work on creating if we don't have it.
How do we do that? How do we cultivate it?
When you're tolerant, you are more adaptable and open to learning and open to personal growth, I think you have to see that there are all kinds of opinions. Like we always say, there's always good and bad. There's always positive and negative. And how you define those things is up to you. But how somebody else defines those things is up to them. And something you think is bad, they may think is good. And they have that right. Especially in this country, we're so fortunate. The government doesn't come after us and hunt us down if we have the wrong opinion. And in some countries, they do. It's not a safe place to have your own thoughts. In the United States, we are fortunate enough we can have our beliefs and also allow others to have their beliefs. And as long as they're not physically harming people or things or doing damage in some way, they have a right to believe anything they want. They can believe that the aliens are here, or they can believe anything. And as long as it's not impacting you or other people in a negative way, that's their right, especially here. So you have to be tolerant.
And I think right now, and I'll go back to politics, when you say they have the right to believe what they want to believe as long as it doesn't negatively affect other people, it feels like some beliefs are negatively affecting or have the potential to negatively affect me, my home, for example. If certain people get elected, certain things change, and I feel like that might negatively affect me. This is just an example. Being able to communicate and to accept differing opinions, I think, is key here. Many of us are reacting as if there is an actual threat to our lives, liberty, happiness. If we're not able to discuss different opinions with people, it becomes a knee-jerk reaction instead of finding common ground and then making things okay for everybody.
It's all about seeing what fits for you and also looking at what you do and do not have the power to impact. Because a lot of things you may not agree with, but you really don't have, as just a single citizen, you have the power to vote, but you don't have the power to get out there and make the change. If a candidate you don't like gets elected, you can not like what they do, but at some point, you have to be tolerant of it so that you can move on with your life.
Mm-hmm.
If you just sit around and judge all the time, it's just going to stop you and it's not going to do anything. If your candidate's way over there in Washington, they don't know you, they don't care, and you're destroying your life over whatever they are doing or might do, you can't fix that. So you have to be tolerant and sort of accepting. When you're accepting, you embrace and recognize the existence of something without judgment. You acknowledge that it is and let it be, especially if you don't have the power to change it.
Yes, I think it's important to remember that accepting is not endorsing.
Exactly. That's a huge, huge distinction, and it's very true. It's like when you're diagnosed with a terrible disease. You can deny it, but that won't do any good. If you accept it, you're not saying, I love this. This is wonderful, but it's there. And so you do what you can to work with it. And it's the same with religion or politics or anything. If you accept, it doesn't mean you like it. It just means that you are aware that it's there and you can work with it.
Yeah, accepting allows you to move forward.
Exactly. And if you accept other people's choices or their identity, even if they're different from your own, it's much better for everybody. When you accept, you go beyond tolerance. By actively recognizing and embracing that there are things that are different, understanding that people have the right to have different perspectives, just letting them be who they are.
Yes, it's kind of what gave rise to that saying that so many people find annoying. It is what it is.
But that's so profound.
It is, and it's true. If you can say, well, that's that,
Yeah.
and then move on, you won't invest negative energy into something that you can't change.
Right.
And in some situations that you shouldn't be able to change. Who somebody else is not your business.
Right. And there are a lot of things, like how people are raising children. Some people think they should do everything to make their lives easy. Other people think they should give them responsibilities and help them learn to be self-sufficient. Both approaches are important to the people using them. And it's not up to us to tell other people how to do it the way we think it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's just an example. There are thousands of things like that we do our way, other people do their way. It does not infringe on us, and nobody is being physically or emotionally destroyed in the process, because that's a whole different thing. I'm very judgmental about people who hurt other people physically or emotionally, or who hurt animals, that kind of thing. I'm judgmental about that. I'll own that. But if they want to raise their kids in a way that I don't think is the right way to raise kids, I'm accepting and tolerant of that, because that's their right. You have to know when it's appropriate to be judgmental and when it's appropriate to be tolerant or accepting.
I read something the other day that said, if you offer help more than once, you're not trying to help, you're trying to control.
Ah, powerful.
And
That's true.
that hit home for me a lot.
Do you do that?
Well, yes. I do, primarily because I think the people that I'm offering to help find it hard to accept help. And so I'm trying to reiterate, I'm here if you need it, because I don't know if they hear it.
Right.
But I have learned that I need to slow that down. If they acknowledge that I have said, hey, I'm here to help, then I have to accept that they've heard me and maybe don't want my help.
Yeah. Oh, and that's hard.
It is hard, but there's a judgment in there somewhere for me that's either this person isn't capable of hearing what I'm saying, or this person isn't doing the right thing and they need help doing the right thing. So I'm having to rein in that tendency to be a little judgy there, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You just thought you were being supportive.
Being a fabulous person.
There you go, because you care. But you were being judgmental and then setting off your caring to try to fix them.
Yep.
And they have the right to be who they are.
Yes, they do.
So that's a great lesson. Good job.
Yay me.
You go, Shan.
Well, this is a super interesting conversation because I feel like threads of all three of these things, judgment, tolerance, and acceptance, run through just about everything in our lives, but they are sneaky. And if you aren't paying attention, they can wind up controlling the way you operate without your knowing it.
Exactly. And in the process, you will alienate people and destroy relationships and cause a lot of problems.
And not feel very good yourself. I mean, it's not fun to be stuck in a judgment loop.
Oh, no, it's terrible. It doesn't get you anywhere. People who every time I see them, they rant about politics. It's like, really?
Sorry.
No. Not you. You find other good things. But there are people who just choose to focus on whatever they're being judgmental about and don't want to move away from it. That works for them, but I choose to not be around it.
To each their own.
Exactly. To wrap it up, being judgmental, tolerant, and accepting are all ways of approaching people, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. Being judgmental involves forming critical opinions based on your personal values and standards. Being tolerant involves accepting and respecting differences without having to adopt them for yourself. And being accepting means you recognize and actively embrace diversity in attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs without judgment. And there are positives and negatives to each of these ways of looking at things. What's important is for you to always be aware of the rewards and consequences of whichever approach you choose.
As always, beautifully said. That's my judgment.
Oh, good job. And I hope our listeners are willing to look at where they are judgmental and see if it is impacting negatively their relationships or themselves and find ways to be tolerant and accepting, because it will change your life and your relationships in many ways.
It's a decision, so practice it. See how it feels when you judge, and then see how it feels when you allow or accept and let go of that need. And my feeling is that you'll feel a little bit lighter.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandy.
And thank you, Shannon. And thank you to our listeners for taking this podcast journey with us. We appreciate you greatly.
We do, and we love it when you write to us or reach out to us. You share your stories with us about self-esteem and personal power, and we really love it when you suggest topics that you would like to hear about, because then that tells us that we're talking in the right direction. And if you feel like doing so, we also love it when you review our podcast, and you can do that wherever you stream, or if you just want to talk to us directly, you can visit yourpersonalpowerpod.com, click contact, and drop us an email. And if you want to learn about coaching and how it can change your life, contact Sandy. You can reach her at sandy@insidejobscoach.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, find your power and change your life.